You're a navigator? At Gattaca?
That's what it says, doesn't it?
It doesn't say you're crippled.
I'm not crippled. I hurt my leg training, you moron. How dare you question me?
Yeah, right.
What's your number?
All right, forget it.
No, what's your number, you f***ing flatfoot?
Look, I said forget it. What do you want, an apology?
Oh, it gets to you, doesn't it? It gets to you that I can do what you can only dream of. I'm getting off this ball of dirt. How dare you question me? That's harassment.
My mistake.
What's your number? What's your number?
I love how he just wheels after him. Like, what's your number? What's your number? I'm going to report you for harassment. I'm a real boy. Everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Psych Podcast, the podcast where psychology meets film. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swan, and in this episode, we are going to be attempting to beat the system so we can fly to Titan. We're talking Gattaca, the 1997 science fiction film directed by Andrew Niccol. Fun fact, this was his directorial debut. It was written by Andrew Niccol himself as well. So sort of this auteur theory film, writer-director Andrew Niccol. The film stars Ethan Hawke as Vincent, a invalid, born naturally and in this not too distant future from 1997. I'm not sure if it was meant to be the early 2000s or what. But, you know, he's got a few maladies, and the technology of the day allows parents to know exactly what might be wrong with their kids, just with a simple blood test. Now, we have a lot of this technology today, but not with this degree of certainty as far as years till death. So as soon as Vincent is born, his parents are told, your child has a heart defect, and he is going to die in about 30 years. There you go. So his parents decide to do a designer baby birth, and they have another kid named Anton. Anton is played by Lauren Dean as an adult. The film also stars Uma Thurman and Jude Law. Uma Thurman plays a fellow worker at Gattaca, this organization that creates astronauts, essentially, right? Because they're sending off people to Titan to live on the moon of Saturn, right? To colonize that moon. And so Irene is just another worker, and she falls in love with Ethan Hawke's Vincent. We'll talk about who Vincent is in just a second, because Jude Law plays Jerome Eugene Morrow. Now, Jerome is a valid, right, as opposed to an invalid. He's apparently got a ton of great qualities, was an Olympic swimmer, but ended up in a car accident and was paralyzed from the back down. Basically broke his back and broke his spine and spinal cord and was paraplegic. Well, through Tony Shalhoub's German character, not that he is German, but his name is German, is a doctor who allows invalids to assume the role and lives of valids. So they go through this whole process. We'll talk more about this whole process as we get into the episode. But so German, it essentially allows Vincent to become Jerome. And the interesting thing about Jerome and Vincent is that because Jerome wants Vincent to become Jerome, because that's his goal, he wants to leave Earth and go beyond Titan, he asks Vincent to call him Eugene. Well, the eagle-eyed viewer, or eagle-eared viewer, maybe, bat-eared viewer, maybe, might recognize Eugene is good gene. You mean it as the prefix for you, right? And so, we've already got that little sprinkle of subtlety here. Eugene is his middle name, and he goes by Eugene, even though he's in a wheelchair. You gotta respect the move there. Eugene is, good gene, right? It's also the start of eugenics, which this entire movie is about, by the way, eugenics. The title of the film, Gattaca, is made up of only the letters that are found in DNA, G, T, C, and A. Now, if you remember from your high school biology class, that's guanine, cytosine, thymine, and adenine, right? Hell yeah, love it. Anyways, so we also have several other characters that I want to point out. Gore Vidal plays director Joseph. Xander Berkeley is the dark horse of this movie. Gotta love his final scene. He's Dr. Lamar. He does testing of all candidates at the Gattaca at Aerospace Corporation. And, I gotta tell you, Elias Koteas has a very small scene as Vincent and Anton's dad, but he's great. He's great. Ernest Borgnine is the head janitor at Gattaca. Caesar, love it. Blair Underwood is a geneticist that helps create Anton. Maya Rudolph, in a young, starting out role, is the delivery nurse at the beginning of the movie. As I already mentioned, Tony Shalhoub, but we cannot forget Alan Arkin as Detective Hugo, partner to Anton Freeman, trying to figure out who murdered the director of an upcoming Gattaca launch. But Dean Norris is in the movie too, and Ken Marino. Look up these people. It's amazing. This cast is stacked for the kind of movie it is, and it's only about an hour and 40. Like, you would think like this science fiction movie would be like 2+ hours. No, it is a tight, everything works in the movie from one scene to the next. And even though a lot of the beginning, first third of the movie, Act 1, we'll say, is narrated by Vincent/Jerome, it's very useful narration and exposition because you get a lay of the land. You get an idea of how this near future looks with illegal genetic discrimination, but really the law isn't enforced kind of thing. But there's genotypic profiling, and you have to be the best of the best for different kinds of employment and all of that, right? So there's a lot to talk about here, including Vincent's relationship with his brother, relationship with Eugene, and relationship with even Irene. One of the things that I think this movie does really well is, from a psychological perspective, is characterize an idea, a concept that is discussed not only in introductory psychology, like you're just starting out, you're going to get this idea, but also in developmental psychology classes where you talk about the growth and development of humans from prenatal to adulthood and death and dying. And that's the idea of nature and nurture, right? Nature being the genes, the biology of the person, and nurture being their upbringing, their environment, etc., right? Things that aren't based in biology. And this movie really characterizes both two as clashing heads, right? So that's what we're going to get into in this movie, and we are going to jump right in. My guest host today is Dr. Alan Whitehead. Alan is a professor, consultant, researcher, and devoted fan to science fiction. It's a good thing we're talking about a science fiction movie today. His work as a professor spans from community college lecture halls to the world of Ph.D. dissertation mentoring. He's got expertise in both industrial organizational psych and sports psychology. When not doing academic research and writing, he spends his non-academic efforts helping organizations and athletes perform at their best and find their joy. maybe the athletes finding joy. I don't know about organizations finding joy. They probably want to find money, right? Meanwhile, his writing efforts rely heavily on world-class, expert-level procrastination skills. Yeah, that's a bummer. I feel you on that one. I'm trying not to do that. He particularly loves the intersection of film and human behavior. Hey! Having taught his popular psychology at the movies course every summer for the past decade. When he isn't dissecting characters or workplace dynamics, can usually be found staring at a screen, me too, wondering if he should have been born a Vulcan, considering that in like the 2009 reboot, the Kelvin timeline one, Spock has like 15 different screens that he's staring at, answering questions from like 15 different computer voices. Yeah. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks, Alex. Happy to be here. I'm excited to hear great things and listen to several of the episodes, and looking forward to being part of it.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you on because as a fellow movie and psych nerd, you are the exact person to be on the show and the, of course, exact demographic for listening to the show. So double whammy there. And so, listen, we met each other through a mutual friend, Jason Spiegelman, friend of the show. And we were both doing something in different locations earlier this month. We were doing the AP Psych reading, right?
That's right.
So
I didn't know you were doing the psych read.
Yeah, I was. I was doing the psych read at home. And that's where I'm probably going to do it from now on.
Ooh.
But yeah, I was doing the read. I had ACK EBQ 2, right?
Yeah,
so
I also had the EBQ too.
Okay, so you the depression and serotonin?
Oh, did I not have EBQ too? I did one of the EBQs. It wasn't depression.
If you did F, that was the learning and studying, wasn't it? The really, really awful one, right?
It was awful.
Yeah.
But,
so
I'm
had
having flashbacks now that you're talking about
I'm
it.
so sorry, PTSD.
Yeah.
We had an easy one because our three sources so for those of you who are not initiated into this AP world, so AP Psych is a college level course that high school students can take, right? Your AP classes, etc. And there are 2 free response questions that every student needs to do. And in those free response questions, they have one of 2 kinds. Well, they have 2 kinds. One is they have to answer questions from articles, and another they are given three research summaries that attempt to converge on a single point, so or maybe 2 points, because you can sort of argue both sides if you want to. You got to make a claim, and then you got to use evidence to support that claim. So that's the evidence-based question, the EBQ that I'm referring to. Because the country is so vast, there are different questions that are given the day of the test. And the East Coast, and I guess the Central time zone, are given one. That's the massive one. And I heard from your question leader that it was awful because
it was terrible.
It was very difficult to make a claim and then draw evidence from the readings to support that claim. Whereas I got the West Coast version, and it was extremely easy for students to take one of 2 claims. So it was serotonin and depression, right? Or serotonin, depression, and then discussion of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And it was very easy to either support serotonin and depression are not linked, or serotonin and depression are linked. And we had a really easy time.
Yeah, there were questions when I was just sitting there staring at this thinking, what? I mean, you could tell like, oh, the student knows something, but it took a while. It was some good brain work, and I think afterwards I haven't really tried to think about it much
until I brought it up.
That's right. After this, I'm going to go sit in a corner and cry like a baby.
Okay. All right.
Now
well,
that I've
fair
thought
enough.
about it again.
As long as you don't do what Eugene does and self-immolate. Yeah. At the end of
a spoiler alert. Right
yeah.
there.
Well, it's been out for 30 years as of next year.
Don't say that. That makes me feel old.
Oh, I know, right?
I saw something the other day with the World Cup going on right now. They said something about the last time the United States hosted the World Cup 32 years ago. I said, no way.
Yeah.
And I did the math and thought, oh, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The 90s were just last decade. That's the thing, right?
That's
You're
right.
just like, no, that was 10 years ago, right?
That's right.
So the follow-up question I have for you is how many times have you done the AP read?
Boy, let's see. I did 2 years in Tampa.
Yeah. Okay.
Then pandemic happened.
Right.
And I want to say I did 2 years at home.
Mhm.
And I think the second year I thought, I don't want to do this. So, and then I ran comps for a university. I had a bunch of stuff going on in the summers. And so I haven't been back until this year. So,
Oh, wow. Okay. We
what is that, 5
overlapped in
years?
Tampa then.
Yeah.
Because I did my first 2 years in Tampa, and
Yeah.
then pandemic hit. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an adventure. It was fun though. I got to cruise around Kansas City this last time and check it out and see some old
Excellent.
friends. And it's
Yeah.
nice.
Cleveland. Moving on to Cleveland.
I've never been to Cleveland, so we'll get a new experience, I suppose.
Yeah. I won't, because I really enjoy doing it at home.
Ooh, I just don't have the discipline to stick with it.
That's
So
fair.
bravo to you.
That's fair. You did also drop this note here. You're writing a chapter on memes?
So I wrote a chapter
You
on
wrote a
memes.
chapter. Okay.
Yeah, and of course everyone's talking about it. Not really. It was a chapter in an edited book looking what was the book called? Thinking Through Memes.
Okay.
Springer published that. And so my chapter was Never Gonna Give You Up, the psychology of meme sharing.
Yep.
There's something really interesting about memes. I also do work in humor studies, and I like to have fun. I think that that's really important. I do think that there is professional joy out there. So leveraging those kinds of things to have good experiences, to enjoy the things that we're doing. Anyway, my meme chapter was just looking at psychological aspects as it pertains to, like, when we get this meme and there's this moment where I say, I want to share this with somebody. Anyway, I published that, and I think a lot of my colleagues, it got published in some kind of newsletter, and so people are asking about it. It's the minor fame within my my tiny worlds that I exist in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, to go back to what you were saying more broadly about doing something within science that really brings you joy. I mean, that's the whole reason why this podcast exists. It's the whole reason why I'm writing a book about it, so.
I've even heard about this book. I used the Skip Dine Young book, Psychology at the Movies, in my class. So maybe it's time I adopt something new. So go ahead and get that published.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're working on
right.
it.
Vincent?
From an early age, I came to think of myself as others thought of me.
Vincent?
Chronically ill. Every skinned knee and runny nose was treated as if it were life-threatening.
I'm sorry, the insurance won't cover it. If he fell,
But I was told that everything was
I
gonna be
really
all-
wish there was something I could do.
Like most other parents of their day, they were determined that their next child would be brought into the world in what has become the natural way.
Your extracted eggs, Marie, have been fertilized with Antonio's sperm. After screening, we are left, as you see, with 2 healthy boys and 2 very healthy girls. Naturally, no critical predispositions to any of the major inheritable diseases. All that remains is to select the most compatible candidate. First, we may as well decide on gender. Have you given it any thought?
We would want Vincent to have a brother, to play with.
Of course you would. Hello, Vincent. You have specified hazel eyes, dark hair, and fair skin. I have taken the liberty of eradicating any potentially prejudicial conditions, premature baldness, myopia, alcoholism and addictive susceptibility, propensity for violence, obesity, etc.
We didn't want, diseases, yes, but
Right. We were just wondering if it's good to just leave a few things to chance.
We want to give your child the best possible start. Believe me, we have enough imperfection built in already. Your child doesn't need any additional burdens. And keep in mind, this child is still you. Simply the best of you.
Okay, so let's pivot to Gattaca. Before we jump into the psych of it all, I'm curious as to your thoughts on the movie as a piece of art. Film, filmmaking, plot, acting, directing. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting film. It's an intentional film as far as the lighting filters that are used, the set. It's intended, I think, obviously it says in the near future, which is kind of funny because are we in that future now?
Right.
But it's certainly set in the, what appears to be like the 1950s.
Right. Yes,
I
it's
think-
very retrofuturistic.
That's right. I think all of that's really intentional. The cast is fantastic. I mean,
I know.
there's even the nurse who takes Vincent and brings him over to the table is Maya Rudolph.
Right.
I was looking through the cast list and I said, no way. So anyway, there's a tremendous cast that's in this. I think it's just an interesting commentary on a number of things. Whether it's right or wrong, I think the fact that it brings these discussions to the forefront is interesting. And that's why we're here, I suppose.
You bring up a good point, because I went through Wikipedia, and I always like to look at what the impact was, especially on some of these, dare I say it, older films that have had a lot of time to stew and everything like that. And I noticed that there was a little section that was about James Hughes, who's a bioethicist. And he wrote in 2004 in Citizen Cyborg that some of the ideas presented in the film should not be just hand-waved away because of the commentary that the film is making. And he notes that, of course, astronaut training programs should have the best of the best. That's what we do now, right? We shan't be sending somebody with a heart condition into space. That would be a bad idea, right? Interestingly, one of the plot devices in Project Hail Mary is that 2 of the 3 crew members are dead by the time they reach the Tau Ceti star system. The other point that he makes is that in the United States, we're already using information about diseases for insurance. That feels dystopian, but we're already doing it. So that's part of our lives. And then the third one, which is really important, I think, in the United States, is that we have a Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which parallels the nature of this movie in that genetic discrimination is illegal. But as Vincent points out in his opening monologue, it's not really all that enforced.
Like many others in my situation, I moved around a lot in the next few years, getting work where I could. I must have cleaned half the toilets in the state. I belonged to a new underclass, no longer determined by social status or the color of your skin.
Welcome to Gattaca, gentlemen.
No, we now have discrimination down to a science.
All right, there's your cleaner material. Start from the front, clean all the way back. And I want to see my smiling face on that floor. What about you, Your Majesty? You dreaming of space? Come here. You start by cleaning this space right here.
I was never more certain of how far away I was from my goal than when I was standing right beside it.
When you clean the glass, Vincent, don't clean it too well.
What do you mean?
You might get ideas.
Yeah, but if the glass is clean, it'll be easier for you to see me when I'm on the other side of it.
Huh.
For all my brave talk, I knew it was just that. No matter how much I trained or how much I studied, the best test score in the world wasn't going to matter unless I had the blood test to go with it.
Well, and they make a specific point of you can get it just about anywhere, even if, from a handshake or a cup that's been used or something like that. So it's readily available. They even have that scene where there's almost like this service. You just walk up with some kind of sample and they'll sequence it for you.
Yeah, Irene does that on a piece of hair from Vincent/Jerome's desk at Gattaca. But before she gives the thing, we see in another window, a woman wipes off some of her, I guess, lipstick or lip gloss or whatever, because she had just kissed a guy and she thinks he's really good genetic material, and she wants to know if that's the case.
Yeah. Interesting how they can take just that subtle, I don't even know how long that was, maybe a minute or so. And it just, it unpacks so much of what's going on in that society.
Yeah. And so I think it's a great commentary. Andrew Niccol's directorial debut, he wrote the movie, so he had something to say about all of this, right? And so as we jump into the psyche of it, I think the nature of our discussion, see what I did there? The crux of this discussion from a psychological perspective is the nature versus nurture debate. And when I teach this idea, I tend not to use the versus that has been so embedded into this discussion. I don't even like the word debate here, because the discussion, I think, is worthy. Debate seems more like one side versus the other, when it can't be one side versus the other. And so the movie is asking the question, are you your genes? And does that mean it's destiny? Or are there some other inputs? And what are those inputs?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I wonder, my sense is that anyone that spends, more than just a minute or two thinking about nature and nurture will arrive at that conclusion that it is a combination of them, whether that's in a lecture or somewhere else. And I think the film is trying to kind of portray this idea that it is both, and it just has to get there through this kind of dystopian vision.
Dystopian, I think, is an appropriate word here, right? Because there are ways in which you can tackle this question in a utopian way, but of course, that's not as compelling as making the society discriminate people based on their genes.
Yeah, no one wants to watch the utopian version of this.
I would. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing.
Have you ever read Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner?
I have. And
I can't believe they haven't made that into a movie.
That is very funny because I had the exact same thought, but there is a documentary about while Skinner was still alive. I think the documentary came out in the late 1970s, something like that, early 1980s. It chronicles a society, a commune that still exists, by the way, that took Walden 2 and attempted to follow its blueprint.
Should we explain what Walden 2 is?
We could, but you could also go look it up. I'm sure the B.F. Skinner fans know we're referring to a utopia based on operant conditioning and positive reinforcement. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, and it's very clear that this society that Gattaca exists in is not Walden 2.
That's right.
One of the points that I wanted to bring up and get your thoughts on, Alan, is the idea that a genetic test could tell when a person might die.
I think, does it say it? I think it gives probabilities of that.
It says that he has a 99% probability of heart condition, 30.2 years.
Yeah, that's right. But do they ever say his age other than we know that he exceeded that?
Yeah, he's in his 30s, and that's all we know.
Yeah, I was thinking, as I rewatched this again, I was thinking about that as they're going through this list. What else they list? ADHD, a couple of other things I can't really remember, but none of those were nearly as high as this heart condition, which is interesting because they revisit that heart condition a little bit later with Irene.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, there is that interesting discussion and question that, if you could know how and when you would die, would you want to?
This is a question that's asked in a lot of movies. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that.
Would you?
I don't know the answer. I don't think I'm not afraid of it. So I guess I'm fine with that. But I suppose the interesting thing that story often tries to explore with this is once you have that information, how does that then affect your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors today and tomorrow and the next day?
Right. So I think that's where the issue with genetic essentialism, this is the term that the society operates under, right? The belief that genes are the fundamental essence of a person. But as soon as you give them that information, now his parents didn't have to give him that information. They did at some point. We don't know when they tell, hey, Vincent, you're probably going to die when you're 30.
Well, they do have that moment. You're right. We don't know, but there is the scene where he falls down and like everything is they're worried about him.
Yeah.
He gets kicked out of the school because the insurance wouldn't cover it.
Right. So when you base a society on this one thing and then give people that knowledge, it immediately changes everything. Right. So the input does not equal the output here. And when you base a society on nature only, right, and no amount of nurture, no amount of environment, no amount of upbringing, no amount of explanation for any of those inputs, then you don't recognize that you're already changing the equation, right?
Yeah. One thing I'm hearing you say, and maybe you're not saying this, but this is an interesting thought, is that it is a combination of nature, nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just ignore the nurture and focus solely on the nature, the genetics in this case, the environmental factors will play a role no matter what, even if I'm kind of ignoring them intentionally or just out of spite or something else.
Yeah. Knowing that this society believes in genetic essentialism, we move to the elephant in the room, which is eugenics. Do you think this society is playing with eugenics?
Are they playing with it?
Have they made it their nature? as a society?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think one mark of good story is always that we're asking what else is happening around it. Because
Right.
if I never ask that, it's probably not really a story worth pursuing. And I was thinking about this: is we don't know how extensive this is. We assume it's somewhat universal in that they have these walk-up genetic sequencing things that you can get instant results on.
Right.
So it does seem like they've built this society around that. Even the interactions between the director and the inspectors and the police are such that it's all based around genetics.
Mhm.
So it does seem prevalent. It does seem that they're totally focused on this, and it changes the way that they interact with one another, probably for the worse.
Now, of course, our real history with eugenics is for lots of bad reasons. To give this society the benefit of the doubt, and this is purely devil's advocate here. Are they attempting to remove genetic abnormalities to produce a stronger human species?
In other words, is that the intention?
Is the intention to benefit the species as a whole?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that there's any evidence in well, let me think through this. I don't think that there's necessarily any direct evidence of that. The only thing I can think of is the scene when they're all on the treadmills and the director's there and the police come in and they're having an exchange about what's happening and how they use various information to screen employees. And the director said something to the effect of, in the past we would make some allowances on certain things, but now we have, I don't even remember how he said it, but essentially he was getting to this point of we have enough people that are superior. He didn't use that word, but that meet the requirements genetically, that we don't have to worry about those other people.
Right.
We can just take the superior people out of this.
Yeah, and so that begs the question. Something that we were talking about before we started recording is what are they doing on Titan? Why does Vincent want to go to Titan so badly? Right? That's his only goal.
Yeah. Other than he's really interested in astronomy and space, but something's going on because they're launching however many a day.
They are launching so many.
Yeah, I mean, that's the near future, I guess, from 1997.
Yeah, it's just constantly launching rockets. Now, we don't know if people are on those rockets or if they're unmanned craft that are are launching prior to people getting there, so they have equipment and everything like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's because the director says the launch window is like once every 70 years.
Yeah,
they have to meet this launch window, but you're right, they're launching all the time. So, interesting.
So I guess, so again, the question is, what are they doing on Titan? Why does Gattaca, the corporation, require this level of genetic specimen to be on the ship? And if eugenics is the intention, right, to create a race of humans, a specific group of humans that are the best, then when they go and procreate on Titan, then Titan, as isolated as it is for every 70 years or so, that's what, 2 or 3 generations?
Yeah.
Then the next crop of people that you send up in 70 years, when I said it, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute.
Different story.
Is this corn? The next group of people that they send up are going to be maybe even that much better and will then intermix with the second or third generation of the people already there on Titan, thus creating the situation of really sturdy humans on this new colony, on this world that's so very far away.
Well, and these people aren't stupid, right? They're smart people. At least that's the impression. And if you're trying to build a society around genetic superiority, well, that's a tough word. That's a PhD level word right there. If you're trying to think about that from having superior genes, everything else will flow from that, because now I'm thinking that's going to influence the way that I perceive others, right? These social interactions is that I am superior to these others. However many degenerates or invalids exist out in the world that are not part of the society. And
Yeah.
And we don't have an understanding of what that balance looks like of numbers.
No,
other
we
than
don't.
we need some people to clean up the trash.
Right.
And other than that, everything's really taking place within Gattaca and the club scenes and the house. That's about it.
Yeah, we don't actually see a lot of society in this world. We only have Vincent's narration. Now, you could make the argument from a storytelling perspective that Vincent represents an unreliable narrator because we're only getting his point of view, and his point of view is, I got a chip on my shoulder. And so I'm going to explain this story from the point of having a chip on my shoulder.
And that's the way it was. Each day I would dispose of as much loose skin, fingernails, and hair as possible to limit how much of my invalid self I would leave in the valid world. At the same time, Eugene prepared samples of his own superior body matter so that I might pass for him. Customized urine pouches for the frequent substance tests, fingertip blood sachets for security checks, and vials filled with other traces. While Eugene supplied me with a new identity, I paid the rent and kept him in the style to which he'd become accustomed. Eugene never suffered from the routine discrimination of a utero, a faith birth, or invalid, as we were called. A valid, a vitro, a made man. He suffered under a different burden, the burden of perfection. I was now a member of a relatively new and particularly detested segment of society. One of those who refuses to play the hand that he was dealt. I am most commonly known as a borrowed ladder, or a degenerate.
And that chip is 100% his brother.
Yeah, because at least the way it's portrayed is that he's having a somewhat normal childhood until the scene where his height's being measured, and he's at 8, he's, I don't know, 2 inches taller than Vincent was at 10.
Yeah.
And he kind of rubs his name off of there. Because before that, it seems like it's relatively normal.
Yeah. And then as they turn into teenagers, they start having this game of chicken where they go out into the ocean and go to a buoy or whatever, some sort of object out there, and then turn around and go back. And we learn at the end that every time that they did that, Vincent was never saving any energy for the swim back. He was always just trying to beat Anton there, which I think is an amazing allegory for the nature versus nurture argument, or Anton versus Vincent, where Vincent represents nurture and Anton represents the nature argument, right? So Anton has the superior genetics because they were all chosen. He's got all of the best health indicators, and he's got greater physical potential because he's taller, which means, he's got more height. And of course, height is given, even in this society, height is given a lot of cred, right? Halo effect from height. He's got better muscle potential, right? Better coordination, all of that, okay? Because he was engineered to be that way. Whereas Vincent uses his status as a janitor. This is an amazing piece of writing from Andrew Niccol, by the way. He gives Vincent the job of a janitor so he learns how things are cleaned. He recognizes what he needs to do to take over Jerome's life.
Yeah, really interesting. That's a really interesting point of whether that's foreshadowing or just because, again, this idea of his environment cleaning shapes the way he's starting to think about things in the future when opportunities kind of arrive. He's always staring into space, and Ernest Borgnine, his manager, comes over and says, "I'll show you a space. Come over here and clean this."
Yeah, I love that. Ernest Borgnine, amazing character.
Yeah.
In the work room where all of the computer stations are set up, and the police are like, "What are you doing in here?" And he's like, "I'm doing my job.
Yeah,
I'm cleaning. Get out of here. That's evidence.
It's just trash."
It's so good. He's got a small role, but it's amazing. Gotta love Ernest Borgnine. And you're right. Like the things that I pointed out over that he resolved to grow over time, which is nurture, is his motivation. He is so motivated to get off that planet, off of Earth, and get to whatever they're doing on Titan. He is persistent. And I think the scene that shows how persistent he is when Anton is headed to the house and is like, calls him and says, you gotta be Jerome, you know.
Yeah, calls Eugene to be Jerome. Yeah, that's
to
right.
be himself, right? And then, you know, he also he comes in and hides from his brother. He's got incredible discipline. He's got to do so many things that are so hard in this movie, and we get a glimpse of what he has to do when he's talking to German, Tony Shalhoub, as the guy who's basically manipulating his body to be more like Jerome, changes his teeth, and more importantly, has to go through leg lengthening surgery so he can be as tall as Jerome, which is incredibly difficult. Like, the real life stories of this kind of surgery are heart-wrenching because of how difficult they are. Basically, I have to learn to walk again with these new legs. And sure, they don't show a ton of it in the movie, but they do show the contraptions on his shins, right? Lengthening his tibia and fibula on both legs. And he expounds through narration of how difficult it was, but he just kept his eye on the prize, right? Incredible discipline. And then resilience. He shows that throughout the movie, of course, but I think when he saves his brother twice in the ocean, when he himself is never saving any for the trip back.
You sure you want to do this? You know you're gonna lose.
It was the last time we swam together, out into the open sea. Like always, knowing each stroke to the horizon was one we'd have to make back to the shore. But something was very different about that day. Every time Anton tried to pull away, he found me right beside him. Until finally, the impossible happened.
Vincent! Vincent!
It was the one moment in our lives that my brother was not as strong as he believed, and I was not as weak. It was the moment that made everything else possible.
Vincent! Vincent! Where's the shore? We're too far out. You want to quit? We're too far out! You want to quit? No! Vincent! How are you doing this, Vincent? How have you done any of this? We have to go back. It's too late for that. We're close to the other side. What other side? You want to drown us both? You want to know how I did it? This is how I did it, Anton. I never saved anything for the swim back.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And to your point from earlier, when you said he's got this chip on his shoulder, and as I'm putting that together with your comment of he's doing everything he can to, in his motivation to get to space, I kind of wonder why? I mean, is it just for the exploration, which is fine? I've always been a lover of space as a kid, but
Sure,
I'm 6'5".
yeah.
I don't think they're going to let me up there.
Well,
maybe
they
the Blue Origin,
accurately they tell us that we're probably not worthy.
That's right. But does Vincent want to just do this to prove people wrong? Is it out of spite in that sense, to I'll show them kind of thing, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that as a motivator. Or is it, I really want to research and study and know? I mean, it shows him doing those upside down sit-ups, because everyone does those, right?
Yeah.
Holding the giant celestial navigation textbook. So he's clearly putting in effort to learn, and I'm assuming has developed a level of expertise. So it's got to be out of some kind of interest that's driving him to do all this.
Yeah. One thing, your last point there, one thing that is not touched upon in the movie is intellectual ability, right?
It doesn't seem to matter. Remember the interview?
Yeah, exactly. He's a smart guy, but because he is an invalid, he is immediately written off.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You're right. The assumption is that they just have what they need.
Good genes bring about good IQ, high IQ, something like that, right? But it can't be. It can't. So from my understanding, and I don't tend to teach about IQ too closely, either in cognitive or in intro, when I do teach intro, I don't spend a lot of time on this literature, but from my understanding is that IQ is one of the higher levels of heritability, and that is to say that you get a lot of it from your parents genetically, which we don't know anything about his parents, but it seems like they're pretty sharp. But it can be impacted negatively via environment. So you could be have a high genetic heritability for a high intelligence, but if you grow up in a poor neighborhood, then that's gonna bring it down, right? Which is again support for the nature and nurture interaction. But there is no way to make it higher. There's no evidence that it goes the other way, that a good environment increases one's intelligence.
Yeah,
So
there's a set limit that you're given, and to what happens with it from that point.
right, what happens with it from that point, and so it can go down, but it can't really go up. And so that is to say that Vincent here seemed to have a high level of intelligence already, but because he was an invalid, like I said, he was written off by everyone because his genetic potential is weak in this society. Whereas someone like Jerome or Eugene, however you want to refer to Jude Law, he had high potential, but because he got silver in the Olympics as a high-class swimmer, he just fell into a deep depression and threw himself in front of a car. Didn't kill him, but definitely took away his life.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at that. And yeah, that was an interesting reveal when he says, I was fully sober. Right? I knew what I was doing when I stepped in front of that car.
Yeah, absolutely. Though he drinks himself to drinks and smokes. By the way, this is just an aside, for a society that prides itself on genetic potential and all of that stuff, people do smoke a lot of cigarettes.
Yeah, I wonder how intentional that was, if they thought through that, or if that's just an element of placing this in the 50s.
Placing this in the 50s, 1997 cinema, the 90s were all about smoking cigarettes. Everyone was smoking cigarettes in the 90s, regardless of what time period it was supposed to be. There was a deep, like, we got to get this in before, everyone says this isn't cool anymore. Because it was the 90s when California started the social engineering of limiting when and where you could do it. The Surgeon General stuff was on all of the packages. And so the 90s were the critical point for like, but smoking's cool, but it's really bad for you.
Yeah. I mean, that came up in a discussion the other day. I was telling students that they used to have cigarette ads, everywhere. You see them on TV. Mm-hmm. I didn't really think anything of it. That's just what you grew up with. And nowadays you have this moment of like, oh yeah, I guess I don't see it. Now all I see is medications and drugs.
Yeah. And movies don't include it unless it's like a defining feature of a character. And even in that case, you kind of got to put a warning in front. If it's like streaming or whatever, characters smoking on screen. Disney Plus is pretty vigilant on that. And I just thought it was an interesting thing that like they're all about this genetic superiority, and yet they drink and smoke because it's cool rather than actually useful. But there is this one thing where Vincent needs a clean urine sample, but it's got alcohol in it or something like that, and so it comes out negative or whatever. And he's like, "I wasn't drinking at all."
Yeah, and he gets mad at I think he was going to the interview,
right?
And the whole interview is the urine sample. That's it. That's the whole thing. And so he's thinking that's one part of it, and so he's trying to make sure, he's nervous anyway, and he's trying to make sure he gets a good sample. And
the most unremarkable of events: Jerome Morrow, Navigator First Class, is about to embark on a 1-year manned mission to Titan, 14th moon of Saturn. A highly prestigious assignment, although for Jerome, selection was virtually guaranteed at birth. He's blessed with all the gifts required for such an undertaking, a genetic quotient second to none. No, there is truly nothing remarkable about the progress of Jerome Morrow, except that I am not Jerome Morrow. I was conceived in the Riviera, not the French Riviera, the Detroit variety. They used to say that a child conceived in love has a greater chance of happiness. They don't say that anymore. I'll never understand what possessed my mother to put her faith in God's hands rather than those of her local geneticist. 10 fingers, 10 toes. That's all that used to matter. Not now. Now, only seconds old, the exact time and cause of my death was already known.
Neurological condition, 60% probability. Manic depression, 42% probability. Attention deficit disorder, 89% probability. Heart disorder, 99% probability. Early fatal potential. Life expectancy, 30.2 years.
The name for the certificate?
Anton?
No, Vincent Anton. That's a good name.
I think this brings up a really useful point about how genetics are used or these samples are used in this movie. So there's a lot of prejudice, there's a lot of discrimination, there's a lot of stereotyping, right? Your classic model for social psychology, right? Where we've got the beliefs, we've got the attitudes, and we've got the behaviors. And so the movie highlights how invalids are treated as second-class citizens. They're denied opportunities, right? There are a number of slurs that are used against them, like degenerates for degenerate. I as corny as it is, I really do like it.
Yeah, degenerate, the invalid instead of invalid. They're when Irene discovers like fully that that Vincent is who he is, she calls him a god baby.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very pervasive, either in this circle of individuals or across all of society.
With these social psychological actions in place and ideas in place, you know, we get a lot of juxtapositions, right? The director, I think, is a useful one. You spotted this.
Yeah, look at my profile. You won't find a violent bone in my body, which is interesting because he's the one that we find out murdered the guy. So he's acting clearly in opposition or contradicting his own words there. And he knows that at the time, which is also kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think he is attempting to appeal to the norms of the society, right? So if you run my genetic test, you'll find that I'm not your guy. But in fact, he is the guy because your genes are not destiny.
Well, and when he said that was case closed.
Yeah, they moved on.
It wasn't until later when Alan Arkin, I keep waiting for him to be Little Miss Sunshine grandfather there, when he pulls out the body and he's kind of staring at it, and you see him take a swab from the eye and then do a genetic sequence, and we don't see what comes up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, is that when he says that's as though we're not talking about this anymore. I don't have that violent bone.
No violent bone, which means I cannot be the person who murdered the navigator, and we're going to move on, which is interesting because this represents the whole self-fulfilling prophecy that this society operates under. And you got to wonder to yourself, well, just because I have the genes that say XYZ doesn't mean I'm gonna do XYZ. And the whole nature of discrimination, right? It's not that who you are prevents you from being someone. It's the opportunities that are denied to you. Vincent isn't allowed to show Gattaca, the aerospace company, isn't allowed to show them that he can do this as a god baby, as a degenerate, as an invalid.
They wouldn't even listen.
He's the one who came up with the navigation charts and all of that to get to Titan. He's the one who did it. Nobody else. It wasn't because he had Jerome or Eugene's DNA or brain. He's the one who did it, but he can't show them that he did that because it would immediately be written off. And on the other side of that is, do we think Jerome or Eugene could have come up with the flight path? We're not shown that he has any intellectual prowess.
Yeah, the implication at least is that his genes are such that he could do it if he wanted to, but we're not shown that he has any inclination, interest, or even ability for that matter.
Yeah.
Other than, his genes show that he's got what did German say is like he could run through a wall or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because he's so strong and his heart is, they keep bringing that heart up because Jerome slash Vincent, or sorry, Jerome slash Eugene, although notice Eugene is such an interesting name.
Yeah.
His heart being very regular, Irene's having some trouble, and then Vincent's being forecasted as the cause of his death.
Wonder if he dies on Titan or within the 70 years that it takes to get to Titan.
Well, how does that work? Because don't they say he's only gone for a year? I don't know how that works because they keep talking about that. Anyway, I don't know.
I think there's some hand wavy stuff that Andrew Niccol did not want to.
They don't do that in science fiction. What are you talking about?
He didn't want to add, the technobabble in there. So he kind of just was like, yeah, it's fine. Don't think too deeply about it. He's going to go to space.
I know we're not on this topic, but I'm thinking about it as this idea of why do we have so often these screenings that are taking place at work? I mean, you think about, like, I don't go to work and have to produce a urine sample all the time, unless they're getting it from the urinal. But I mean, is it just to like kick me out? I mean, understandably, it seems that security is tight, but Lamar, the, I guess, doctor, is always, apparently picking up samples from him, even commenting on the size of his penis. And I'm like, I didn't catch this the first time I watched this several years ago.
Yeah, it's very strange. But he also, I think, is the only one to guess that Vincent is not Jerome.
Yeah,
and I think
he does that early.
I think he knows quite early into the whole charade. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and that's where he starts bringing the sun up.
What is this?
New policy. Flight got you nervous?
Well, there's a problem, Lamar.
I never did tell you about my son, did I? He's a big fan of yours.
Just remember that I was as good as any, and better than most.
He wants to apply here.
I could have gone up and back, and nobody would have been the wiser.
Unfortunately, my son's not all that they promised. But then who knows what he could do. For future reference, right-handed men don't hold it with their left. Just one of those things. You don't miss your flight, Vincent.
But you make a good point, because to get into the building, they have to do a finger prick, and that's like the subway token or the card that every day they have to get a finger prick. And so they show this very tight close up in the very beginning. And you mentioned that it takes almost 6 minutes for anyone to say anything in this movie, because we're watching the entirely methodical tedious nature of Vincent having to scrub every aspect of his own DNA off of him, so he doesn't bring that into work. And then he has to put this like sack filled with Jerome's blood into a thing that he pastes over his finger, so when he does the turnstile entrance, that it marks him as Jerome instead of his own Vincent blood. Which, if you don't put that in the right exact spot, it's going to prick you somewhere else.
Well, and they several times they show that finger prick, even in a mobile kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clearly something that's prevalent and used. At one point, an officer comes and finds Jerome in the wheelchair and takes his finger prick.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he's like, who do you think I am?
Yeah, I love that scene. It is not necessarily needed for the overarching story, but it does give you a glimpse into how Jerome continues to think of himself. Even though he's in a wheelchair, he is still high society, right?
Yeah.
He's
this
still
is only
the
a
cream of the
temporary.
crop.
This thing happened to me. That's right.
Yeah, and he just keeps wheeling after him. What's your number? What's your number?
Did you catch that the officer is Walter White's brother-in-law?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice work.
This cast is stacked.
Yes. Also, sorry, while we're on this, the Vincent's mother is the admiral from Star Trek Discovery.
No way.
Vincent? My God, you have changed. Has it been so long you don't recognize your own brother?
Are we brothers?
Our parents both died thinking they'd outlived you. I had my doubts.
What are you doing here, Anton?
I should ask you that question. I have a right to be here. You don't.
You almost sound as if you believe that. I committed no murder. You must be disappointed.
You've committed fraud. Listen, you're in a lot of trouble, Vincent. I can get you out of here.
Do you have any idea what it took to get in here?
You've gone as far as you can go. You come with me now.
There are still a few million miles left to go.
It's over.
Is that the only way you can succeed, is to see me fail?
I'm telling you.
God, even you are gonna tell me what I can and can't do now? In case you haven't noticed, I don't need any rescuing. But you did once. Well, you've got all the answers. How do you explain that?
You didn't beat me that day. I beat myself.
Who are you trying to convince?
Do you want me to prove it to you?
It's not important, Anton. It's forgotten.
I'll prove it to you. Do you want me to prove it to you? I'll prove it to you!
So I have one more question for you, Alan, before we end our discussion. From your work as an industrial organizational psychologist, what would you say is the defining feature or features of the Gattaca Corporation and their interactions of employees and superiors?
It's a really interesting question. This summer, I've been teaching a job analysis and employee selection class.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking a little, the short version is, how do you, when you read a job description, where does that come from? It doesn't just get made up. It's not just like, I guess we can ask AI these days, but there is a lot of work that goes into building that, at least if it's done correctly. So from building a job description to trying to advertise and get the word out that says, hey, we're looking for somebody to fill this role, to getting people to raise their hands, then having a pool of applicants and narrowing that down from, I don't know, let's say 100 people down to 2 or 3 or 1
Sure.
that you want to select and hire. I mean, that is a tedious process when it's done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a great deal of time and effort. And so there, as I think about that, in Gattaca, they just take a sample, right? And then you're hired or not. And it's interesting to think through that kind of selection aspect. I have all sorts of issues with from a visual standpoint, they needed to have everybody working, again, back to that 1950s. They're all at cubicle-ish or desks, not even cubes,
right?
Just typing away. And that's we used to think that was a terrible way to work. Now we know that it's a terrible way to work. So it's, there's lots of challenges there. But I think a lot of that are used as devices within the film to kind of set the stage.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I think Gattaca's it would be interesting to see what's happening with the rest of the world. Clearly there is these clubs where people are going and having a good time. When Vincent and Jerome go out, it seems a lot more relaxed than when Irene and Vincent go out to, I assume, the same club, but maybe it's a different one.
Okay. You're right. We only see snippets of settings. We've got the house where Jerome and Eugene live, or Vincent and Eugene live. We have Gattaca, and we have the club, and then the streets around the club. But we don't really see anything else outside of the opening, we'll call it prologue. But it appears that Gattaca is in California, and that they being the Freemans, the Freeman family, live on the coast, nearby where Gattaca is, because that's where Vincent sees the launches all the time. Like, he sees like 2 in a day or whatever.
Time out. Their last name is Freeman? How did I get to this place and not even know that?
Yeah, their last name is Freeman.
Huh. Well, a lot of layers in that.
Yeah. I mean, all of the names have a ton of meaning in them. Eugene, as you pointed out, eugenics, right? Good gene. Vincent has the base of victory. Anton apparently means like good specimen or something like that.
Irene Cassini, I think, is her last name.
Right. Cassini is the
Saturn.
spacecraft. Yeah. We've got Freeman, right? Freeman.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. I didn't realize Freeman was their last name. That's cool.
I think you would. I don't know if it might show it on the computer screens when they show ballad and ballad, but I don't think it's ever spoken in the dialogue. So I learned of it. I never caught it on the screens, but Wikipedia says their last name is Freeman, so I'll go with it.
All right, I like that.
Yeah, but to your point about the workplace, the fact that genetic responses are the only thing that is necessary seems like the whole thing is doomed from the start. right? It seems like my whole pitch about what's going on at Titan, right? They're sending the best of the best to Titan to colonize and have the strongest thing. Seems like that's a pipe dream because they're only testing genetic material. And as we know, genes do not tell anything about cognition. They can't. Cognitions just happen. Consciousness is so as a concept, so underdeveloped that we have no idea how we go from genes to neuron activity to consciousness.
For some reason, this is making me think of at Gattaca, the director Joseph, I think is his name,
Mhm.
where, back to our discussion from earlier when he said, I don't have a violent bone in my body. That's the end of the discussion. Come to find out, he was so adamant about this launch that he murders this other person. I mean, that's interesting to think about what the ramifications of that might be within that society.
Yeah.
Does that, do they now look at that differently? Will this be a shocking kind of revelation?
And the interesting thing that the movie does not tell you is who this person is that's murdered, what their plans were, what comparison they had to Vincent's plans, and all of that. There's no information about this other person and why he was murdered, other than the director is, as you say, adamant that everything needs to go according to plan.
I feel, wasn't there a line in there that Vincent in the voiceover when he says that person was like the closest to discovering who he was? I think there's something like that, and I have to go back and look at that. So I wonder.
Yes, there was that line. He was the person who's closest to discovering who I was.
We don't know anything about that though.
But that thread is never picked up. I think that is potentially a red herring for the audience, but it doesn't comport with the facts that the characters know, right? It is not internally consistent, which takes me back to my earlier point about maybe Vincent's an unreliable narrator, and maybe he just perceived that this person was close to figuring out who he was, but it could all just be something weird. And I think that was a red herring for the audience, which is unfortunate because it's never, we get the tied up loose end where it's found that the director was the one who did it, and his reasoning is very broad and unfinished, kind of loosey-goosey, vague, that kind of thing.
You mean in his confession kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. He just kind of seems, just like at this point, you can't do anything to stop the launch. I don't know how that works. They stop launches all the time.
Right.
But somehow the launch is going forward, and that's the only thing that he cared about. Yeah, he just doesn't care anymore.
Right. But I think the way that it clears everything up for Vincent is that the interaction that the director has with Vincent at the beginning of the film, when he's at his desk and he's like, "Are you sure this is the path forward? Is this like the way to get there or whatever?" And he's like, "Yeah, I double checked all of that." And he's like, "Okay, good."
And that's before the murder, right?
That's before the murder.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. It's a good thing I came to this podcast.
Yeah, so that happens, and then we find out the murder. Vincent has does the narration and says the person murdered was the closest one to finding out who I was. But again, red herring, because Vincent never interacts with that person at all. And then the plot is moved via the investigation. And I think the investigation is the way in which Andrew Niccol gets Anton and Vincent back together, because remember, Vincent leaves his family when he's a teenager. And then you got to tie up that loose end. Who murdered the person? Well, okay, the director.
Yeah, on a second watch, I didn't notice at first until I was paying attention to it, is that Anton actually, he and Vincent never connect. They're in the same room several times when they're going through screening, and Anton's walking through the line just as he gets to Vincent. Vincent walks through, and on the treadmill, he never sees him until that where he's sitting at his desk that one time.
Yeah, until they have their final confrontation in the computer room.
Yeah, can we talk about that as like they're fighting, like, yeah, let's go swim. That's suddenly the thing that's going to solve all this, and suddenly everything else goes away.
Yeah, Anton's like, yeah, I'm going to let you go.
Yeah.
You're impersonating another person, but, I'm going to let you go.
You beat me in a swim race, so all right.
Well, he technically had to save his life again.
That's right.
So maybe Anton was like, all right, I owe you again. Yeah, that's right. You owe me twice now.
Yeah. I wonder what that car ride was like from Gattaca all the way to the beach.
It's like, I'll meet you there.
Yeah. Electric cars, though. How about that?
Hey, yeah, in 1950s.
That's right.
Near future 1950s from 1997. Yeah. The retro futuristic. Of course, you got to have electric cars in retro futuristic societies. Jetsons, Fantastic Four, etc. Yeah. Well, I want to thank Dr. Alan Whitehead for joining me to discuss Gattaca. Before we say goodbye, Alan, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Where can folks find out about your work?
Oh, I do lots of work. I think lately I've been more and more interested in my work as a research institute called the MirthWorks Institute.
Okay.
Essentially, and I'll give you a link so you can put that in the show notes. But it's
perfect. We're
just trying to explore this idea of professional joy, that we spend so much of our lives at work. Let's have a good time. Let's enjoy.
Indeed.
Let's smile and laugh and be excited about going.
Let's be excited about going to work. Oh my gosh. Does that sound dystopian? I don't know.
It can happen. It's real.
I would much prefer to enjoy myself not going to work, but different strokes.
You can do that too.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I will link that in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Until the next one, thanks for listening.